The NBA doesn't deserve the benefit of the doubt when it comes to charter flights. You know, I agree with that. Mitchell Northam, I agree with that because it was announced just a week ago that the WNBA was going to be implementing charter flights for the start of the 2024 WNBA season, and it was going to be phased in. So we didn't know what that meant, but at least the initial reports made it seem as though charter flights would be available at the start of this season for all of the league's 12 teams. And then yesterday, Meghan Hall from USA Today's For the Win, yesterday, news reports started to come out, right? And we learned that the New York Liberty weren't going to be able to use a charter flight for their game. We learned that the Chicago Sky weren't going to be able to use a charter. Here's reporting from Windsor. The New York Liberty will not be flying charter for their first two games, which is tonight. And then they also have a game on Thursday. And then the Sky, reporting from Annie Costabile, Elizabeth Williams told her that players will have a town hall meeting to discuss with the commissioner. That was supposed to be yesterday, but the Sky also wouldn't be traveling. Now that town hall meeting, Meghan, as being reported by Annie, was not just going to be for the Chicago Sky. It was going to be for all of the players to get more clarity on the situation. Now, as of the time that we're recording this on Tuesday, I still haven't heard any more information. If you have, I would love for you to share it. But what we do know is that only two teams to start will be utilizing charters. And those two teams are the Indiana Fever and the Minnesota Lynx. And when this came out, there was quite a backlash to that, Meghan. And, for a variety of reasons that we can talk about. So let me stop there and just ask, you're kind of up to the minute following this story. Has anything new happened or have you heard about in terms of the charter situation and why only two teams were given, charter flight access and why the two teams that were selected were the teams?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I reached out to a league source yesterday. I did not hear back. I did hear back from a team source from the Atlanta Dream, and they are flying commercial for their flights as part of those three other teams that are flying commercial for those first couple of games. So that just confirmed to me, yeah, it's true. That news is only two teams right now. I think the biggest thing here is a couple of things. So the first thing is Breanna Stewart tweeted it yesterday. Why wasn't this done for all teams immediately? There's still a competitive advantage. We just saw a tweet not that long ago from Alexa Filippo of ESPN saying that, hey, Aaliyah Boston passed out on a flight yesterday, aka she was sleeping on a flight. The team, Christy Side said, was able to have a practice ahead of their game. That's a competitive advantage that not a lot of teams are currently getting right now. So I think this is really an issue that the league is going to have to probably ramp up a little bit quicker, right? Teams are picking up early that, hey, my colleagues are already on flights. Why am I not on a flight here? And here's the other thing. I think they announced it and then people found out. And I think that was a misstep, in my opinion, because the players were stunned to kind of find this news. And again, when you roll out something of this gigantic nature, I get it. You're not going to get everything right. We kind of assume that there might be some hiccups here and there. But in my opinion, I think it was a bit of a misstep not to have your players, who this mostly directly impacts, know about what you're deciding of their future, right? Like, this is something that they can look forward to, because they can say, oh, hey, I can cut out, easily 3-4 hours plus of time that I get back to recover, time that I get back to practice, time that I get back to just be. And for the league not to inform their players ahead of time is something that I think might be a bit of a misstep. And I think in hindsight, they might go back and say, we probably should have done that.
Yeah, well, a few things you mentioned. One, the players were surprised initially, but that surprise turned very quickly to excitement, right? Because this is something that they've wanted for a long time. And the Liberty, in a way, have sort of been the face of this. So you see there's, you know, the Indiana Fever. We saw Caitlin Clark. We're seeing some of the other players from the Indiana Fever. Erica Wheeler put this yesterday on her Instagram story. And so everyone saw this, and everyone is watching this video. Hey, Leah Boston, everyone's watching this video on Twitter. And a lot of complaints were coming in from, you know, people on Twitter, commentators, and it was people in the media questioning it. It was fans questioning it. Apparently there was a league source who said you would just think that they would wait until they had the ability to offer charters to all teams before rolling this out. So I think everyone can understand that it's not ready to go right away because of the timing of when this was announced, right? I think everyone can understand that. I think what everyone cannot understand, right, is why the particular two teams that were chosen were the teams chosen, right? So this is Jackie Powell, right? And the thing she points out here is that there's been a competitive advantage, or at least the concept of it, that when you offer charter flights, that's what it gives you because your body has time to rest. You're not dealing with sitting in seating that doesn't accommodate, you know, taller people. You don't deal with flight delays and being stuck in the airport for hours. So really, it allows the players to prepare better and be at their best, right? And at times, the flights do affect them. And so in the past, I was starting to say that the Liberty has sort of been the face of this because last year, you know, they had like a really hectic sort of issue with their travel. The AP went with them, you know, this was last year, went with them for, I think it was like a week or so while they were traveling, and they dealt with endless delays, being stuck in the airport. We were all seeing images from the airport, and it's like, why are they going through this? Why is this team going through this, right? And then also a couple of years ago, right, Joe Tsai, the owner of the New York Liberty, proposed a plan that would get charters for all of the teams that he would get comped. That's what he proposed, and he'd work out a way to get it comped. So basically no one would have to come out of pocket for it. And the owners, they shut that down. They didn't want to go with it, citing various different reasons, saying, you know, they had reasons that seemed a bit nonsensical. Maybe players instead would just, you know, prefer more money, but they didn't want to go through with it. And not only that, but the Liberty had flown their players, you know, kind of on the low, like use charters to fly some of the Liberty players for games. They also, when they were like experiencing, I think it was like a 3-game losing streak, or they were going through a losing streak, and they flew them out for sort of like a retreat just to refresh, right, and get better. The league fined them for this. They said, you know, you cannot do this. It violates the policies. They were fined $500,000, right?
Yes, I am.
And I love this headline for treating its players too well, right? And so, and some of the considerations were taking away all of their draft picks. I mean, they considered some extreme measures to penalize the Liberty ownership. And also, the fine was actually higher. They appealed to get it cut down, right? And one of their claims was competitive advantage. So Meghan, if that was the case 2 years ago, how is it that now it is okay to implement charter flights and only make it available for 2 teams to begin?
I think that's a really good question for the league. I think that's what everyone is wondering right now. Why is this okay? Who decided this? How does this get, you know, rolled out? And I think there's a lot of noise right now and not enough clarity. To your point, to the article that you referenced, treating your players too well. This has been an issue that has plagued the league for several seasons now. It's not a new concept, right? We saw it 2 years ago with the Liberty. We saw it last year with Brittany Griner walking through DFW airport being harassed. It came back up again when Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, and the entire Fever team is walking through the same airport, being not necessarily harassed, but being bombarded by fans. And hey, they can't even pick up their baggage because they're having to fly commercial. So these questions have been, they've been swirling now, right? Like it almost feels like, you ever been in a group chat and everyone's talking at once and you can't even get a word in? That's kind of what it feels like right now. It feels like every now and then we'll get a piece of information from the league and it's like, oh, but that doesn't even match what we're talking about right now. It's part of the story. And I think that's kind of what we're getting right now. I think the league is doing its best to ultimately roll out flights, but it's still not making sense. And I think that's why most people are like, what is happening here? Why is this so slow? And I think back to there was a press release that the league released that said charter flights would be phased in. And I think that gave them kind of a blanket to kind of roll this out how they see fit. But I don't think most people thought that it would be 2 teams would get 1 flight and that's it. These teams don't even know if they're going to get flights for their next games. Like we're just talking about today, May 14th. They've got flights for today. That's it. And I think to me, there has to be a bit more transparency. And I hope that the league is coming with that because not only will the media ask them, fans will ask that, the players are going to wonder that. Like, when is this coming and how many games are we getting this for? And not to mention, is it going to be like this in 2025 as well? Will it be full on from the beginning of the season? Hey, everyone's got flights and we're going to go, that way. Or is it going to be another sort of, well, you only get 10 or 15 flights this year. We'll bump it up to 25 next year. No one really knows. And I think that's the larger issue right now is that like the league is doing itself a disservice when you have so many eyes on the game, so many players who are interested, so many staff members, GMs, everybody is in on these charter flights for its benefit. And yet they still don't have the details. And again, I'm not in the league office, so I'm not privy to a lot of these conversations. But from the outside in, it doesn't look great. With this graphic here, you can see that there's so many road games to start the season. So many road games. And if you've got that many, if you've got 5 or 6 out of your first 10 being road games, you're going to want those flights. And so to me, it just boggles my mind that like these teams are unaware of what's happening. And I saw a tweet earlier about Commissioner Engelbert, employing players to have patience. And yeah, I get it. Yeah, we want to have patience, but how long? How long is the patience path? That's where I'm confused now. It's how long do you expect these players to wait when they've been waiting? And now you've kind of teased them, you've promised them charter flights, and it's still like a don't really know sort of thing.
Okay, so listen, I'm not buying any of this, okay? First of all, from the time I saw the phase-in language, my spidey senses, started tingling. The lawyer in me was like, okay, I already expected some hijinks because it's like, what is this? What does that even mean, okay? So yeah. That's first of all. But secondly, like, we just need to call this what it is, right? You wanted to give Caitlin Clark charter flights, right? The moment she was spotted walking through the airport, had some extra security that, she had gotten from Iowa, due to her rise and notoriety and, the fame that was coming. So she had already secured some extra security, right? But that video surfaces and questions start to come about charter flights. And so now all of a sudden you find the $25 million necessary to pay and implement the charter flights, right? And then you roll it out and you give it to the Indiana Fever first. And personally, I think the only reason the Lynx got it is to, one, give it to another team, so it didn't seem like you were totally being biased. And secondly, because we already know Cheryl Reeve already called out the league after, who's the coach of the Minnesota Lynx, right? She called out the league when the league did not make available their preseason game versus the Chicago Sky on the WNBA app. So that's also like, let's not have Cheryl talking about it some more, in my opinion. Now, yes, I'm speculating, but, come on, like, this is so clear as day, right? It's like, let's get Caitlin Clark on charter flights. And whether that is what it is, we know that's what it is. I really can't sit around here and play the, oh, we don't know, and give them the benefit of the doubt. They don't deserve the benefit of the doubt. But I find it impossible that the league is not seeing all of the conversations. They're hearing the buzz where people talk about race, right? And how they're treating a white player versus its black players, right? And so then, to me, it's audacious, it's defiant, it's just unapologetic. It's like they don't care. They're like, okay, whatever, we're gonna give Caitlin Clark charter flights, And optically, it does not look good. If you want to say the reason is because they had 5 of their first 7 games away, that would be believable to me if we didn't see that so many other teams have 5 and 6 games, away games early to start the season as well, So I say shame on the league, and at some point it's the backlash. There's been a backlash now with the preseason debacle by not airing, by not playing Angel Reese's game. Now you roll out charter flights and basically, yes, you made it available to the Minnesota Lynx, but you made it available for Caitlin Clark, a player who's already perceived, to be getting a level of treatment where, yes, people will say she's the one bringing eyes to the league, though others are bringing it and some won't acknowledge that. But just because she's bringing the most eyeballs does not mean that you get to treat the other players like they don't matter, right? Like that should not be the case. And it doesn't matter what kind of numbers you bring in. Every player is worthy of receiving the charter flights. And in my opinion, if you are going to do a rollout where everyone is not going to be able to get it in at the same time, I liked what Breanna Stewart suggested, whereas let the teams know. So if teams want to come up with the funds to pay for it and owners want to do that, then they can at least pay, for their teams to fly charter, because you can't allege competitive advantage anymore if you're doing it like that, right? Or, obviously another option is not to, let anyone get access to charters until they're all available, which I don't necessarily support, but that's the most fair option. Or implement something and explain to us what the criteria you're using. And to me, it would be a risk-based criteria. Who are the players who are most at risk, most in danger? And to me, that would put Brittany Griner at the top of the list, and making sure the Phoenix Mercury have charters, right? But there are some other players who've had incidents, maybe not at the airport, but Angel Reese was tweeting about someone coming up to her and knocking, on her car window.
Yeah, on her car.
Do a risk assessment and say, okay, and it might be that Caitlin Clark still falls under that risk assessment because of her high profile. But the way that you did this, the optics are awful. I'm going to give you the last word, Meghan.
I would have to agree with you. I do think the optics are not great, right? I wrote about that. Hey, if it was a whisper before with Brittany Griner, it's going to be a full-on scream right now with Caitlin Clark, right? This optic of Caitlin Clark walking through DFW Airport got everyone talking. Everyone is like, what is happening? Why is Aaliyah Boston, with Caitlin, with Erica Wheeler, this entire team, why are they not protected here? And I think that's where we start to see this snowball, this quick movement. Hey, we got to get this going. Because that was 4 days later, not even a week later, all of a sudden there's charter flights. And in my mind, it's like, okay, I get it. You're trying to move quickly. But then the news after that of, oh, it's only certain teams, and we don't even know if those teams have it after that. To me, it just seems like a very reactionary sort of thing. I remember that Christine Brennan, who also works at USA Today, like I do, she said, hey, why is it the investment now? Well, why is this now? Well, there's more eyes in the league, the growing investment, those were things. I get it. To me, it sounds like pressure. It sounds like, oh my gosh, we cannot have someone who potentially might become the face of the league walking through this airport with security and hoping that, that we can protect her that way, right? It's not something that's sustainable. But to me, and I'll say this again, if you're going to do this, it starts with communicating it the proper way, right? Everyone needs to be on board. That's your GMs, that's your players, your front office staff. Everyone's got to be on board. And then you roll it out and say, hey, here's our strategic plan. The reaction might still be the same. Hey, we don't really like this. This is too slow for us. But at least people would have seen the transparency, right? They would have seen, hey, it's a phased 1, 2, 3 approach. Everyone's going to be on board by this date. This is what we have. And to me, I think that's really good press that you could have right now, right? Everyone is looking at the league right now about these charter flights. What are they going to do next? How are they going to move? And if I believe, I would be redrafting all of my communication at this point. Like, just shred it up, because you need something a little bit better. Because the more that you don't say anything, the more that things get leaked or our players tell things, like the worse it looks on these optics and the worse it looks from a narrative standpoint. So
sure.
If I'm them, you got to go back to the drawing board at some point and say, okay, listen, we might have botched the rollout a little bit, but we can recover here and we can put this behind for all of our teams. There's no reason that the league MVP should be tweeting about charter flight. There's not a single reason. And
right.
That's when you know that you're down bad and that you haven't done your job, your due diligence to get this rolled out quickly. So hopefully they get themselves together. I wrote about it today, and everything we know situation, like this is all the things that we know. But even I had a hard time putting together all the pieces because it seems very, very scattered right now. And that's not a great look.
For sure. Well, you said it. They're reacting, and the league needs to stop being reactive, and they need to start being more proactive. The brights are only going to shine bright. The lights are only going to shine brighter, and the public outcries, the backlash, it's going to continue. So the league does need to get itself together, and people like me and you and the fans and the players need to continue to hold them accountable till they get it together. Meghan Hall from USA Today's For the Win. Thank you so much for joining me. Appreciate you, Meghan.
Thank you.